Hi, I'm Nate. Welcome to Stratum, the most powerful, versatile tax planning and projection system on the planet. We've been working through Johnny and Janie Johnson, and to get you oriented around where they stand, they are now fully funded throughout lifetime, and their assets would indicate that they've got a couple million left over at the end of life expectancy. Now, we've been through a few things to make that happen. We did some strategies like Roth IRA conversion, Social Security optimization, some additional contributions, working a little bit on the side during retirement, and we got quite intentional about how we used their assets. Most interestingly, and what we're going to focus on a little bit today, or at least related to today, is the deduction bunching. We started putting some of the deductions in a 2-year cycle where every other year we itemize and then take the standard deduction and then itemize the standard deduction again. That strategy did some kind of cool things. At its simplest, we kept giving the same. Now, this shows difference because of an odd number of years in the forecast, which then done every 2 years indicates that there's one less year of giving, but right, it's basically the same. And as a result, we've got an additional $500,000 of ending portfolio value. Now, that's really not the topic of the discussion today, but you have to understand that to understand this. We're going to do something that's quite surgical. And here's what I mean by that. We can see John's tax deferred assets and how they change over time in this view. Specifically, if we go into the details of the transactions, we can see different contributions. In this case, we have $16,000 of John's contribution going in along with $4,000 of the employer. These are not being indexed, they're just being added over time. And then we see conversions start to happen. This is our Roth conversion in the first year, the second. Now, these are happening up to the 12% tax bracket. We're quite conservative about it. And then we start using the money. Now, notice we retired at age 65 but didn't need anything from tax deferred. That's because we had some taxable assets to use. But starting in the year 67, or at the age of 67, we no longer have taxable assets. We're using some tax deferred. And so we're actually pulling, in this case, 34,000. But we must have had some taxable assets. We had some headroom also to do some conversion work. So we're doing that throughout, some withdrawals and some conversions. This is the part that I wanted to point out. And you can see it in early years as well, how we cycle differently each year to conversion and then withdrawals and conversions. This right here tells the story. In 2046, starting at age 75, John has a $55,000 RMD. Now he happens to need a little money as well, so he pulls 13,000 and then converts 150,000. In the next year, we don't actually use any money from tax deferred. You see this? Because of the tax rate that we're in due to the deduction bunching. This must be a deduction bunched year, meaning that we have a lower tax rate and so we use money from tax deferred. This is an off year. We're using the standard deduction, and so our tax rate's a little bit higher. Okay, this is the surgical operation that I wanted to talk to you about right here. Now, recognize that this is far enough into the future that it's probably not directly, certainly not immediately relevant. But as a talking point and as a planning concept, it most certainly is relevant, and it will become increasingly relevant as these years approach, or perhaps as you're dealing with a client who's more maybe in this age bracket. What I want to do is look at these RMDs and recognizing that John is a highly philanthropic type of an individual, consider using a qualified charitable donation in these years. Now, I'm not going to get too precise about it because we're several years into the future, but we've got about a $50,000 RMD up through, we'll say 2050 at this point. So again, not that we're doing anything immediately, but in the context of a broader plan, this is quite interesting where we can talk about some of the value that we can bring to the relationship with John. Let's go into our charitable giving strategy and define a $50,000 annual gift starting in 2046, going through 2050 at this point, and we'll use the qualified charitable donation going to some qualified public charity in John's name. If we now save that and go back into this detailed view, again, this is all auditable, so you get a detailed view of everything that's going on. Notice that we have all but eliminated RMDs. Again, recognizing this is 20 years in the future, we don't need to get all that terribly precise. But we've created a now strategic way to use the tax deferred assets during retirement that complements John's philanthropic attitude and benefits the long term tax picture. To what tune? Well, let's see. We've just increased our giving by about $200,000 right here. And on its own, although it certainly costs us something in ending portfolio value, that's to be expected. We've created some tax savings to boot. 53,000 nominal, $9,000 of net present value tax savings. That's kind of a cool concept to illustrate. Look, there's a whole lot more here. Stay tuned. Thanks for being here.